Yo, what's up, guys? Sorry for this coming out super late. In fact, this and the boys episode will probably be coming out, will be posted at the same time, but we're recorded super late considering when they all aired, and that's just my bad. I was doing some stuff and then kind of got backtracked, but as you can tell from the title, I think this episode kind of just solidifies how mid the series has been, and I don't blame people for stop watching after like episode 4. And I know there's some people who like watch some of my videos and they just haven't cared to watch any of the show. And that's just, I think that goes for a lot of people who are talking about the show. But let's head into our daily. Where is it? There we go. Our daily IMDb rating. And obviously, this one is sitting at a 5.1. And one thing you might notice is that I made an IMDb account. That way I can actually rate these episodes um, in the very beginning, and then obviously the non-spoiler section, because one of my friends admitted that, a few of my friends admit that for some TV shows or things that I post about, they'll watch until I get to like the spoiler section. So I feel like giving kind of a rating here will just kind of give a better idea of what I thought about the episode without going heavily into spoilers. But for this episode, originally when I first watched it, I thought it was going to be that it was kind of like average. But after having thought about it, rewatching it again, I just got to put it at a 4. And it's just kind of a nothing burger, to be honest with you. Like, there are some new things that we learn about, but besides for that, there's just a lot of like broken or just fulfilled promises that for some reason they just refuse to show or tell us. And while we're here, I may as well just go through and quickly read all these. First episode, I think I'll go to 5. It's kind of average. Same thing with this one. I think the first 2 episodes were just, they were average. They weren't great, but they also weren't terrible. This one though is an easy 3. I can honestly see the argument for a 2, but I'm gonna give it a 3. Um, Dialogue is cringy. A lot of this just makes no fucking sense, and episode 3 is just easily one of the hardest TV show episodes I've ever had to watch. Episode 4, I think, is just, it's hard because I do agree that it is slightly worse than the first 2. So naturally, I would have to put that at like a 4 out of 10. But I don't know. I mean, part of the reason why I also think this episode kind of sucks is just because there's some things they reveal in here that are just kind of like immediately reversed, or some things that they set up here that's immediately reversed in this episode, which obviously I've talked about. So with this one, I think this one is a 6 out of 10. The fight scenes do carry this episode a lot, and I would like, they carry it a lot. I found the fight scenes to be pretty good. I found them really interesting. The use of cartosis and the way he fights around it, I think, was fantastic. But there's just some character inconsistencies in this one that they kind of hinted at in the 4th episode that just, it makes it hard, especially when you can only do like 6, especially when it's just out of 10 rating and each star is a point. It's hard to go and argue a 7 compared to a 6. Like, if I could give it like a 6.4, 6.5, I'd probably do that. But I just can't see making that full upgrade to 7. And then here, obviously, 4, because it's just kind of a nothing burger. But now that we've got that out of the way, let's get into spoilers, because this show is kind of dog shit. And if you're just watching YouTube reviews, I appreciate it, obviously, but especially if you're watching my reviews. But I don't blame anyone for quitting the show, especially after episode 3, and just getting all their shit from YouTube. Because honestly, a lot of these YouTube commentators that talk about the episodes afterwards sum it up kind of perfectly. And a lot of times when the writing is that bad, it's pretty easy just to sum up and talk about that way. Because First thing we wake up, or first thing the episode starts off to, is Osha is in a foreign planet. And they specifically don't tell us that planet, which is a pretty key detail to remember because so far every planet they have shown, the show has gone out of their way to put the planet's name. And for this one, it was just unknown planet. So I think they're trying to keep that a secret for a reason. Later on, one of those reasons are probably that they hint at later on is the ore of cortosis that's in one of the in like one of the mountains or whatever the fuck he dig into, like one of the island things that he dug into. I guess maybe like it was a pre-active or post-active volcano or some shit like that. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like a little cavern that he was in. So that's probably a better, more accurate term. But so they show that like later near the end of the episode, and she wakes up. She's kind of falling around, trying to. May's just kind of looking around, seeing where she is. She sees the Sith Lord again, so she kind of follows him to the outdoor hot spring where he's going to go take a bath. And when she goes to pick up the lightsaber, he's like, "Oh, how does it feel?" And this dude seems to be the only one in the show who's actually good with the Force because no one else can sense anything for shit, and it is kind of annoying. We'll get to that later, but so there's that whole thing. They start talking about ideals, and he does this thing where like, "Oh, I know what you're thinking because of the blah 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 blah." He's like, "Oh, you're probably wondering how I know. I don't have any mind control powers. I just am such a psychological master or whatever." It's like, okay, whatever. Um, that goes on, and then obviously it kind of cuts between things. So I'm gonna just stick to talking about them. Just go section by section, and just combine everything together. Eventually, it goes on to shows little cavern, and he talks about his past a little bit. They hint at the fact that he makes a statement that he got his scars from his master, and you can see like a it's kind of like a wave like scar on his back, which right before that they showed off. It's either right before or right after he says that they show off the green aliens lightsaber, which turns out to be the first live action our first live action view of a whip lightsaber, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. So they're possibly hinting at the fact that he was her former apprentice and that she did that to him. There's this other thing, and because of that whole conversation, May starts trusting him for some fucking reason, and then he encourages her to um, put on his helmet because to like put on his helmet, explore her curiosities or whatever. Because he starts feeding her this information that like, oh, you could be just like me, you could be just as powerful as me, and you could be better than what your sister was. Because and he even admits that Mayo's a mistake and he doesn't want to go after May. Sorry about that. But so that happens, and then looking at May pretending to be Osha with Soul. Again, I don't know why the fuck it takes Soul so long to realize that May is not Osha, and he doesn't. And while he doesn't interact with her directly in the beginning, he kind of sends her off to go do tasks because the little I don't even know what the fuck they call that thing. I guess it's like it's some type of mammal. I don't even can't even recognize. It's like that weird mammal thing that walks on two legs that was with them in the forest, guiding them. He snuck back on board, obviously, at the end of last episode. And, like, apparently he does nothing to warn Soul. Like, they show him around the ship, but they show him, like, never interacting with Soul, which is kind of weird because then he then goes and later confronts May, but then doesn't take that time to tell Soul. So it's presumed that Soul figured it out, or you could give it benefit of the doubt, see that it did tell Soul. And that's why Soul was able to detect her so easily after she had finished resetting the generator because they have this kind of like long conversation where Soul starts talking to May and he starts admitting to some things to May about OSHA. And because May doesn't know what OSHA went through or anything about OSHA's life, she has to make very generalized blanket statements in the same way that OSHA did when trying to be May in the poison shop in episode 2. But obviously, Soul kind of figures out that from the way she answers certain questions that this is not OSHA. So then when the transmitter comes on, and the Jedi are signaling that they're coming in. He stuns her and then jumps into hyperspace to kind of dodge the incoming party of Jedi. And then he locks her to the bed of the medical station, and then basically just says, "Oh, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to admit and tell everyone what happened." And she's like, "Oh, you will," and it's just that whole other thing because he was supposed to say it. He was supposed to reveal what happened this episode, as we said last episode. But now he's going to do it next episode. So when the fuck are we doing that, right? Like, are we just going to keep shuffling it to the fucking finale? Like, when the fuck are we seeing this shit? But so he does that, and then I also after him doing that and purposely avoiding the Jedi party that's supposed to be coming there to help rescue them, they go there, they land, and the Green Jedi obviously, before she shows off the whip lightsaber, she's going down. They're looking at all the bodies, and she's asking her Padawan to look and describe everything, and the Padawan's describing everything, and then because of the lightsaber marks, he's like, "Oh, did Master Soul do this?" And then she's just like, "Oh, that's a heavy accusation." And obviously, that could be them hinting at the fact that they could use Soul as a scapegoat, because of the fact that if Soul and the other Jedi had something to do with the death of the witches, it could be terms for punishment for not only Soul, well, exactly for Soul, since all the other Jedi are dead, but also the fact that right before this happened and they went onto the expedition to, or the rescue party, she was seen having a hologram conversation with the senator, showing that the Senate had agreed to approve a external investigation of the Jedi Council and their affairs, which would be a problem considering that they decided to do this mission incognito, not tell the High Council that there's a potential Sith out there, and obviously it backfired on them pretty fucking bad. So there's a chance that that little dialogue is just them hinting at the fact that they could use Soul as a scapegoat, and obviously with Soul hinting at the fact that he had something to do with the death of the witches, that could make it even more justification to use Soul as the scapegoat to kind of hide the fact that the Sith exist. But that's assuming they do that. And I don't know if that's going to happen. So either way, um, that is pretty much what happens with them. And I think that's literally just it. Besides for the fact that at the very end, Osha finally puts on the helmet, and then it's presumed that Osha is starting to fall to the dark side the same way that May kind of did. But I don't know. The problem is that they imply Soul is involved with the death of the witches. They said they're going to explain it this episode. They're not explaining it this episode. Hopefully, they'll explain it next episode, which I believe when this is uploaded should be today. But we have to wait for that. We have to see what the fuck they're doing with May, because I find it really hard to believe how after a few sob stories in one episode, May suddenly goes from this all good going person who was helping whoever out, whoever from like episode 1 when she fucking freed that violent criminal off, when she like removed that creature from the violent criminal, or when fuck, what was it? It was episode, yeah, it was episode 5 when she didn't let Soul kill the Sith, even though that would have solved all their fucking problems. Um, well, not all of them, because obviously the Jedi would have died and they would try to find a way to do that. But even then, like, I don't know why the fuck she didn't just let Soul kill the Sith there after killing like 4 fucking Jedi. And for some reason, she thought it was more humane to let bugs try and eat him alive. There's just so many character inconsistencies there. Um, I don't even know what the fuck they're trying to do with May. Because first it looked like she was going to turn herself in and try and turn a new leaf, but then she immediately flip flopped, which is all shit I've complained about in the last video I made. But like, I don't know. Besides for them revealing some backstory stuff about the new Sith, about the Sith Lord or whatever, and them showing like the cortosis or in like the cavern, and how that's how he makes all this shit. There's just nothing to this episode. So you really just, like, if you're gonna give us nothing, you just, it's kind of just a shit episode. But it's not nowhere near as bad as episode 3, obviously, which kind of makes me think about putting episode 3 down from like 3 to a 2. But yeah, that's kind of today's, or I guess technically last week's episode, and those are my thoughts on it. If you guys enjoyed the video, obviously leave a like. Leave a comment down below as well. Let me know what your guys' thoughts. What do you think is gonna happen, and whether or not if you guys are actually still watching the series or if you're just watching YouTube videos about the episodes. Because I would admit, if I wasn't going to make YouTube videos on these things, I would have just watched other people's YouTube videos without watching the show. Because after our these past few episodes, it's just not that great, and I don't blame people for not wanting to watch this show. But either way, I unfortunately will continue to watch this show just so that way I can talk about it. But if you want to see more from me, hit the hit the subscription button and then also the notification bell. That way you can see when all my other videos are going up or when I possibly go live and get my ass beat while playing Elden Ring or any other game that I am trying to play. But besides for that, I think you guys know the deal. If you've always been a part of the posse, thank you so much. Subscribe, be a part of the posse. Love it very much, and have a good rest of your day or night. Peace.